Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends Blutoshi and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
All right, here we go.
We're doing it.
There we go. Okay, the audio was being finicky. At first it had to go to, I hit it like 80 and then I slide it down, but I had to go to like 1 just to get it working. What's up, everybody? This is Blutoshi, and on my right is Disco.
Hello, friends. We're in the we're easing into the summer flow and kind of digging it. So happy you guys can join us, and excited for a nice show.
Absolutely. So I'm on vacation here in the beautiful Outer Banks of North Carolina, with the ocean in my view above my screen, and you're seeing the beautiful wainscoting behind me. But we wanted to keep the momentum going every Wednesday and keep the show rolling and talk about everything that's going on this week in crypto. Disco, I haven't talked to you in a week since our last show. How are things going?
Good. I will confess to a mild case of separation anxiety. However, I think I've been able to kind of, pull back from shooting out messages when I realize, okay, he's on vacation. It's probably not super urgent that I hit him up with this, that, or the other small little follow up or little nugget that I stumble across. But I will admit to jealousy of your proximity to a large body of water. I have always found that is one of the most perspective giving and relaxment inducers that I can come across. I'm quite landlocked where I am, so when I see that, I can even feel kind of the coastal shores kind of breezing about. So keep it going. I love it.
Yeah, at least you have mountains. Like, you want to be landlocked, go to Illinois, the land of being locked. But yeah. Well, was there anxiety not reaching out for certain purchases or was there some news that just like you're like, I have to talk about this. I have to decompress, and my wife doesn't want to hear it anymore, and my kids think I'm crazy.
Yeah, there wasn't any like, I mean, we're kind of in, little crab time in the summer, it feels like, and there's not a ton of new like, oh my god, I got to loop him in on this or that. It was more just like, I'm used to kind of talking through this stuff and not, you're right, not boring the significant other, or God forbid trying to bring it up to the kids who have zero, if not less, interest in a lot of the things that I'm very excited about on a daily basis. So just kind of navigating that side of it for sure. But I'm glad that I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad we're able to connect and do this show. I will get this part out of the way on the earlier side, and I don't mean to come across like it's a chore, but we do want to ask anybody who's listening to get involved with the show. You can click in and comment, which we think is a really cool feature. We're doing the video side of this live on X, and we think it's, kind of the next frontier. I think they're really going to dig into it. But if you could retweet, like, subscribe, any of the above, it'd be very well appreciated on our end. And as I say, if there's anything that you'd like us to touch on this week, we'd be more than happy to kind of work that into the show and or develop something for a future show.
Yep, well said. It's always helpful to get those likes and posts and retweets. So, all right, where do we start, Disco? So much on the macro side.
Yeah, I guess we'll just kind of paint the picture of, last week when we were sitting down, our headline or caption was, we can be flirting with all-time highs for Bitcoin, like as we were doing the show, and also for I think it was Dog Go to the Moon. We were seeing if that was going to pass a certain market cap, and everything kind of has come back down a little bit. So, we're
slightly. Runes, especially. Runes just got like there was like a 2-day window where they were just on fire, and then the bubble just burst, didn't it?
Yeah. So you see that, and then we have to, one of the themes of the show is we're in a evolving and maturing space, and it gets impacted still because it's considered risk on when you look at it from more of the macro traditional investor perspective. So today, that world is awaiting the meeting and the from the Fed, and more so Powell's statements afterwards. So is he going to come across super hawkish or whatever it is in terms of any interest rate cuts? They're not expecting any. And this morning, the CPI May inflation number came in, and it was lower than expected. So that kicked some life back into the prices. It got Bitcoin back up around 69-ish or something. So it's crabbing in there. I suppose that if we get news of a couple rate cuts being in the plan with their little dot plot, that'll help kick it up again. It's kind of interesting. I looked at someone put this out, and over the last 4 days tied to a Fed meeting, Bitcoin's gone down the same time, like 10 to 15% beforehand. And then it always seems to kick right back up after the meeting. So it just kind of gets tied into that play. And it kind of gives you, if you're going to be super analytical in terms of trading, it probably gives you a decent entry point, every 3-4 months or so.
What was the net of today? Inflation was lower than
Yeah.
expected.
No, it's
So
like it's in line with where they're trying to get it. So there wasn't any they're now able to say that they are moving towards their goal. Again, I'm front running what they're going to say after the meeting, because this is kind of happening, as we speak. But the bottom line is, it wasn't scary. It seems like it's coming down a bit. I don't know if I see that day to day. It's always so weird, these
I just
different
don't know if I
gauges, right?
buy any of it, to be quite
Thank
frank. Like,
you.
it's so funny how much we depend on this one guy to tell us every 3 months how inflation's doing and how all these things are doing, when a lot of it is obviously being manipulated by them. And the whole consumer price index over the years has completely been retooled to not include things like gasoline, food, and things that people actually use from day to day. It's like, oh, television sets, because I'm in the market for a TV every other week, and that's how I feed my family with eating television sets. So it's funny how much weight we put into this, but obviously, as the biggest currency in the world, so much depends on that. But I would almost think the opposite would happen. Like if inflation was getting more out of hand, you would think Bitcoin would go up.
Yes.
But that just goes to show you that with risk on, Bitcoin and crypto is seen as a huge risk on asset for normies and traders and mainstream institutions, whereas for us, it's the kind of hedge against all that. So it's like we're thinking of it in opposites, but to me, it's just the cause and effect is always seems in the short term a little silly.
Yeah, it's weird how once you're kind of, you're pilled or whatever the term is, and you're down the rabbit hole, it's like you could be conservative in a lot of your other investments, but you really feel like totally underexposed, even if you're like way overweighted in, digital assets. So it's like, once you kind of get that in, you're like, dude, I need more. Like, I don't need to, I need to get more. And it's like, I have a lot, and, all that goes out the window. I guess the other big news story that kind of ties to some of this is, you were saying, do you have a need to buy a new TV or anything like that? And it's kind of been for a while, people asking if they really have a need to buy a new iPhone. Has there been a significant development from a technology perspective that would
Right.
motivate a change in consumer behavior towards that? And, Apple had their WWDC earlier this week, and it really came out, it kind of got pinned as kind of their entrance into, AI and incorporating AI into, their operating systems and stuff moving forward, which subsequently, led to Apple retaking the number one market cap spot over Microsoft. So
Oh,
that
so
stock
the market was bullish on that. Interesting.
extremely, like,
Oh,
it was at like 185 before it, and now it's at like 215. So it
dang.
real
So
from
all Apple had to do was say AI, and I heard they waited till like an hour
yeah,
30 in. Usually the headliners, like, they tease with a couple silly things, and then it's the headliner, and that was late in the game. And it's called Apple Intelligence, right?
yeah, which is actually kind of smooth. You get the AI with Apple Intelligence, so it was kind of,
Right.
it's
Co-opting the name. But, you know, I didn't realize that would be such a bullish signal. But I guess an interesting take is like Apple's bringing AI to the mainstream, and they're doing it in a very simple way. Like I heard, instead on Midjourney, if you're making AI pictures, you have like you can put the f-stop on the camera and the type of lens it uses. Like you almost have this open palette of whatever you can do. And with Apple, I heard it's more like, oh, hey, this is your friend. Tap on them to make a little AI image of them, and it can be a sketch, like color, like colored pencil, or it was like there's three different, or a paint stroke or something. So they're trying to limit your choices so that people use it more. I mean, because the iPhone is so mainstream, I guess that's the way to go. It'll be interesting, but sounds like there's some people, it sounds like the stock market investors were loving it, but I know Elon didn't love it, right? Which,
Yeah.
it's neither here or there, but he said that if you're going to have AI at the OS level, at the operational system level, that has all sorts of like kind of spy surveillance stuff. And he has Grok, so who knows what the real take is here, but he's basically saying none of my employees will be allowed to have an iPhone. If they do, they can bring it in, and then they have to put it in a Faraday cage before they actually enter the building, which was a strong take, but maybe I don't know how realistic that is, but maybe it will fall through that. Maybe there'll be an X phone. Who knows?
Yeah. It seems like there's something going on with him there, obviously. And I think he might have been a little bit triggered by their kind of alignment, or Apple's alignment with OpenAI. And, I think that kind of set off some of his actions there. I mean, it's also somewhat interesting that he's sitting there. They're going to decide, I think, later today, if not tomorrow morning, about the compensation, for Tesla. And he had that whole package where it was, 56, whatever, million billion or whatever, if they hit the numbers, and they did. And now it's up to that vote from the shareholders. So it's just fascinating how much one gentleman has on his plate. We sit here and look at like our show. It's like he could just have a show of just his inbox, right? Like, dude, I got this. Oh, we launched a rocket. Oh, I'm doing
Right.
this.
Yeah, here's what Elon's doing for this hour, and it could get 40 million live viewers, and obviously on Twitter, like if he's on, it'll be like, it'll literally like an alarm will wake your phone up, be like, hey, he's on, check it out, so I guess if never get in a fight with someone who owns who buys barrel by the ink, right? So I don't know what the new analogy there is, but it's interesting. I mean, he's done a lot of very interesting things with X. We'll see where it's going. I still think I need to get some Dogecoin because you got to figure that'll be the currency of X. But his tech on Apple was it was an interesting one. So it really runs the gamut on how people are envisioning that working or not working. What's your thought on it? You're an iPhone user, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that them using, kind of the term AI for the rest of us and everything, like that was kind of how they were positioning it. And I think that it needs to be, we always talk about it, even with, the adoption of crypto, like it needs to kind of be in the background. And I think that that's how they're going to be positioning it, so it's not going to be that blatant. It's just going to make features, a lot more, better user experience, better outcome. It's basically, I think one of the takes is it's basically going to make Siri what it was kind of envisioned to be, so a lot of the things that we wished over the years that Siri would do, I think that this may be the way to kind of make that become actualized and become a reality. So did you see that thing with the calculator? Like that was kind of crazy. That was pretty cool when they showed just the, you change a digit and it changes the math equation instantly on the calculator side of it. So my son was like, dude, I'm set. Like I got to keep getting iPhones. Like that'll help me so much in school and everything. So it remains to be seen exactly how it's going to shake out. But as I say, there really hasn't been a motivating factor aside from another, angle of a camera or another, you know, improvement in your camera or your pictures over the last 3-4 years to get something new. So I think that's why the stock's running.
Yeah, and Apple hasn't been cutting edge in years, like, and they don't have to be because they once you have the install base, the switching costs and the switching desire goes way, way down. I did hear about that calculator. So basically, if you have an Apple Pencil and your iPad, because I know people were like, oh, that's your big announcement, a calculator. But some people are like, no, you don't understand how cool this is. So basically, you can write on your iPad with the Apple Pencil, and then it's just like solving the equations in real time. Is that the net?
Yeah, essentially, and it like does the same kind of handwriting. It was incredible, but I think you're exactly right in that it's more of kind of a hint of what they're going to be able to roll out, and I wonder if it just means you know if that's going to usher in just a new kind of app layer tie kind of period where there'll be just new developers playing with this and putting some of these tools into new applications for iPhones and kind of give a resurgence there, because what has been super new out of that recently.
Yeah, no, that's true. So it's, I know, helping my kids with their math homework, like anything that makes stuff simpler to me would be more than welcome. But I know a lot of times they have to do it in their silly little programs, and some of these programs are good and some are like, how did this one, like, it makes me, we started an iPhone development company back in the early days when it first started, and maybe I should have gotten an education, because like I look at some of these my kids apps, and the only reason they're still there is because that's probably what the teachers know, and they've been there forever, and some are good but some are just so crappy. So that will be interesting. And Siri, I've never been a huge fan of Siri. Like, I basically use it to be like, remind me to do this tomorrow on a certain day, like, hey, remind me to call Disco tomorrow to about the Nat Cats or whatever. And those are great. Adding something to a shared shopping list with the wife, I mean, that's basic stuff. But Siri to me has always been like, I don't understand. I don't understand that comment. Like, it just couldn't cross that chasm to really help you. I err way too much on the side of still thumb typing, and I never got good at thumb typing. So my brother, who's way older than me, way smarter than me, has been using talk to text forever, and his is always like seamless. So I probably need to evolve that. So I guess as long as they said it was still private and they kept the privacy very good, but it sounds like Elon's saying good luck with that with OpenAI. Like, if you're letting them in too low to the OS, like, it's not private and it's all smoke and mirrors. I mean, who knows? I can't reverse engineer something to tell you either way, but to me it kind of feels like, even though Apple has probably better privacy than Google and probably better security just because it has a less installed base globally, like, are there really no backdoors to the stuff? I find it hard to believe.
Yeah. um I guess the big, kind of, I guess it's now macro in a way, like it's almost a fusion of it, but I think policy or politics and policy kind of lines up now with some of the bigger news of the week. And there was no lack of that this week. And, we're seeing obviously the campaign starting to take center stage even more and more in America. And, we're looking at, November, but we're starting to see, a lot of news being made from candidates. And a lot of it is tied to, the acceptance of crypto. Um, Trump has had the lion's share of the headlines from that perspective. He got just a grip of money in donations from crypto executives earlier this week.
He got
Last,
12 million, right?
correct,
Yeah.
and last night he hosted a miners summit or a miners meeting of sorts with some of the leadership from Riot Labs, and in doing so, today, or maybe it was last night, he tweeted out that Bitcoin mining may be our last line of defense against the CBDC. Biden's hatred of Bitcoin only helps China, Russia, and the radical left. We want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. It will help us be energy dominant. So, and he's going all caps on the made in the USA and everything like that. So it's just, it's fascinating seeing it just come to life in terms of being a real, campaign stump sort of issue. And, people would say, oh, is this really, are these single issue voters going to do this or that? But as you can see from the fundraising, it's lining up pretty well for him. So he certainly is distancing himself from Biden on that front, and Biden doing his veto and following
The
through on the
veto, yeah.
veto is it could really be looked back on as a big kind of black eye. And in fact, I know I'm kind of going pretty long, but in
No.
fact, I think it was today, there was a new article that came out in New York Magazine, and it's kind of like a anon Democrat kind of was telling the story of this slide of the belief in Gensler and Warren's, tactic of just not providing regulation to let the technology die. As we've always said, the technology is already out there. It's out of the gate right now, but there's been a massive transition within the Democratic Party specifically on this
Mm-hmm.
issue, and it's really changed kind of the complexion of how everyone's looking at everything. Gensler and Warren, like, their days on top are certainly precarious if they're going to stay at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that pivot 2 weeks ago seemed like that was such a, obviously we're going into the good weather. That was such a big week because everything happened at once. And, the executive branch was even like, how can, let's talk to you, crypto people. But then he vetoes. So I don't know if it's this internal struggle, push and pull. Clearly, there are Democrats who are like, I can't imagine they're not sounding the alarms. I mean, I know you said Mark
But they are.
Cuban. Yeah, and Mark Cuban was basically like, the Democrats are going to lose this election because of crypto. And it's it's an early call, but it's probably a correct call. To me, it seems like, I mean, obviously, if you take the report from the government, I can't remember who did it, the DOJ or one of them, or maybe it was the U.S. Treasury or the Fed, was like, oh, only like 3% of people care about crypto, and it's a very small number and it's insignificant. And then, we're hearing as high as 20%, especially in swing states. But clearly we have a very outsized voice now because of Coin Center, because of Jake Chervinsky, and because of that Bitcoin summit we went to. There's a lot of people who are really paying attention to this. Obviously, the lobbying's getting stronger and stronger, and the tide is definitely turning. And as a kid who grew up voting more Democrat, whether you want to mock me or not, like, that's not you, Disco, but just in general, I know, because I always hear, like, in the last couple of years, like, oh, pretty much everyone in crypto is Republican, and I'm like, I'm an independent now, but I used to vote more Democrat, so I suspect there's many more of us out there, but. And after COVID, and now certainly with crypto and all the lies that we've seen with crypto, and just regurgitating things from like 4 years ago that have proved umpteen times not to be true with Warren and Gensler and all of them, it's hard not to be like, what else are they lying about? But to me, this is such a disappointment because, I feel like we have two extremes right now, and then there's so many of us in the middle. From all parties, independent, Republican, Democrat, are just like, give me sanity, give me balanced books, and for the most part, like, let people be themselves as long as they don't, rain on other people's parade and stuff like that. And it just seems to me like the Democrats, like, I don't think Joe Biden is really running anything now. That's personally, and maybe I bought into that side of it, but it's just. We just saw a video of him like everybody was dancing at some benefit or something. He was literally standing there, like, smiling in slow motion, like the gears were just not turning quite as quick. Who knows what stuff gets put up and what's real and what's fake? But to me, the Democratic Party just they are completely missing this boat. And who knows? Maybe the Republicans get voted in, and behind the scenes they like smile and say they're into crypto, and then certain people who were never really into it quash it more. But to me, it seems like the Republicans are on the right side of this one, and the fact that crypto has become a political issue is only, in my opinion, beneficial to the Republicans and not the Democrats. I mean, I don't know how else to look at it.
Yeah, well, I'll say even in the New York Magazine article, one of the things they're talking about, one of the points that they're making is even pro crypto Democratic voters, you know, are thinking of flipping, pro Trump on this single issue. And it's quote, there's a lot of soul searching happening in the industry. And it's quite complicated for a lot of folks who grew up voting Democrat to think on some level, why does this guy I voted for and this party I voted for want to put my industry out of business? So
Well,
when
and
it comes,
also they're total. They've been Elizabeth. It's not like even putting us out of business. They've also alienated us, like kind of like inferred like that we're
yes,
criminals. That like
they
it's like
shamed.
it's f yeah, and it's like f you. And now that's why a lot of us are fighting back. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Disco. I just wanted to add
No,
that little nuanced context to it because it makes me hot and bothered.
I like it when we get a little hot and bothered. When we get a vacation toasty, and we're still going to get a little riled up. But I do. It's true, man. It was insulting, and it was bullying, and it was based on non-fact, and we saw that go on. And there's actually a really good example of that again being. Yes, it's good that we have advocates now, and there are, things in place to try to advocate for the space. But there was this guy. There's this Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat from Virginia, who tried to slide in this old terrorist funding or verbiage into a must pass intelligence
Right.
authorization act. So he tried to basically slide in the old kind of Warren, hey, it's, pirate money, da da da, which would then lead to having people pretty much have to KYC in order to hold without being able to get their accounts frozen. So it's just so dirty in terms of what they're still trying to slide in. So yes, the headlines are great. It's great when, one of the presidential candidates is saying, I want every single Bitcoin to be made in the USA moving forward, and, and going, it's a pretty crazy statement. It's
Yeah.
pretty big in scope. But then to see that same time, like they're still being squirrely and trying to like slide in stuff. So it's sneaky, when people are desperate and they're losing kind of their point or their power, watch out. And I'm glad that, there's at least some groups out there that are watching this and poised to make sure that
Right.
it gets addressed in the right way. So I guess the digital chamber was the ones who are really helping to kind of suss that out and make sure that that gets eliminated from the must pass funding bill.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing that you just made me realize, it's good that I feel like a lot of us are tuned in and hearing it earlier and earlier and earlier. Like this one just came out of like, cause it had to do with, the military and like spying and all that stuff. So this
Yeah.
was kind of like the secret sessions, but it seems like the second that it caught wind of crypto friendly Congress folks, they were like, no, 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 no. And like they pounced on it quickly. They let us know about it quickly. And I think the last line of the thing is like, probably not going to pass, but not that means we should let our guard down. Maybe it means we should keep our guard up even more, but it's good that we know this one probably isn't going to pass with the chemistry of the cabinet right now. But like you said, Disco, it's just tough because like I don't know, as like an independent, like I said, fiscally conservative, which no party exists for that anymore. Everybody spends money. They just spend it on slightly different things, but there's really no party representing us. I don't know what the best makeup would be to make sure crypto can keep doing what it's doing safe and sound without citizens being hamstrung in what we can do. But this is going to be a tough vote this year, and it's just disappointing. It's just so disappointing how tone deaf they are and how not only Democrats, but like so many of these Congress people don't really represent the people that they're supposed to represent. So, and this is just the one we know the most intimately, but you could probably apply it to so many different industries. So,
Yeah. That being said, RFK Jr. will be speaking at Bitcoin Nashville.
mm,
So that's the end of July, the 25th to the 27th. So, when you're talking about people that have alignment with, some of the core ethos, and it seems relatively genuine. I think it's kind of hard not to think that, RFK is
Right.
pretty on board with that. So it's a weird time to see it being politicized and becoming part of it, and then being embraced. And you're right, it's almost like, the stepchildren, where people are like, what are you doing? That's, we're looking down on it now, getting kind of hugged and embraced because you can help get someone over the finish line is kind of interesting.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess what else is there to be said about this political landscape except
Yeah.
for RFK has been into crypto. I think he probably does understand it better. He caught that one way earlier. Trump was not pro crypto in his first term. Now he is. And I think there probably has been a change of heart, but I also think he's not he knows how to get votes and where the swing voters are, and that could be the difference. I love that made in the USA. I know you made the comment earlier, but like I'm like it's so it's almost so off. It's right again. Like because he's right. Like if you mine it, if you, we do want Bitcoin to be mined in the USA. Like right now, the US government does, because I don't think all of the Mt. Gox stuff has been auctioned off yet. I still think our government holds the most Bitcoin. Obviously, is the biggest financial market and the biggest, the dollar reserve is us, right? You would expect that to be the case, and it's only slightly higher than the next country, but God, if I was them, I heard a great podcast like a year ago, and this guy was like a think tank for like military intelligence from like a security standpoint. And he was like, there is no reason why the US should not be stockpiling Bitcoin, even if that's just a hedge against, its success. Because if it is,
Yeah.
and you do find yourself on the outside, maybe it'll take 20, 50 years that you're holding it and that you've got a baseline if Bitcoin does become the reserve currency for many more nations. And it, dare I say, like the global business reserve currency of the world. So it's an interesting take.
Yeah, it is. The fact that they are the biggest holder, right? Like it's somewhat ironic, but it's also indicative of a hedge, right? And making sure that you're going to have some relevance if it does switch that dramatically.
Well, a hedge, and if Bitcoin goes way up, that's they can utilize that for who knows what. Private sector's generally better at utilizing money because if you don't make money, you go away, and then the next person tries. Whereas the government can't go away, so if they're utilizing money, it's just more of a crapshoot. And then I'm in local government, and every year, a lot of times you raise your budget 3 or 4% because if you don't, the year after you can't raise it another 3 or 4% for when you need it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait, that's like it sounds as crazy as it does. You'd think you'd go to like zero. Some companies do like where you just start over from sales and everything every year. You're like, no, you don't just say 5% over last year. You say like zero. It's whatever it is. It's starting from zero, but it's being more realistic. But who knows?
As a young sales executive who was in the city of Chicago and wasn't handed a large book of business in the beginning, having to prove myself, I thought, what is different in this city than the other city that I was coming from, which was Los Angeles? And I was like, there's a ton of power centered at City Hall here. So one of my first days as a sales rep, I went to City Hall and went to every department and gave them my card and basically said, if you want to get your word out to people in this market, I can help you with that. And if you need to burn your budget, I can help you with that too. So I would occasionally get calls from different departments being like, how many ads can I run this weekend? I need to do this or that. So it worked out it was a good cold calling strategy. I did a vertical. I just went, up and down the 4 or 5 floors and dropped my little packages off. And I did get some nibbles, and people at my company were like, dude, who's advertising? I'm like, don't worry. It's fine. It's a general message.
just blank air, or it's like reading is fundamental ad from like 1976, from the Chicago Public Library or something. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really smart. But yeah, the whole way that budgeting is done, unfortunately, it just keeps going up. And when we have recessions or when things change, it's you either have to keep getting more budget or you go down. And then that year when everything goes down and you don't have as many revenues from taxpayers, that's when you really need it. And it kind of from a citizen standpoint, it blows. But from a running your little town, it's I get it. We have a police force, we have roads, you got all this crap, and you got to make sure that you've got a buffer or for the rainy day. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And then if you look at Polymarket, Trump's way ahead on Polymarket. And, sometimes people will be like, oh, but that's more, people would be more inclined to support But the bottom line is the chasm is so large that people are, there's a lot of stories out there and people saying like, I don't think people are ready for the wave of, change that may be happening in this upcoming election. So to see one side kind of fumble the ball in the red zone as often as they have, it's kind of like, when are you going to really course correct if you are, and is it going to be genuine, or are you just kind of responding to polls at this point? So we'll see how all that plays.
Yeah. And is everyone responding to polls? But the Democratic, that pivot, it felt totally reactionary to knowing that they were getting crushed, and there's got to be so much internal fighting that we're not even hearing about. Whereas the Republican, maybe whoever's not in the executive branch, that party, maybe the infighting is just more obvious, or maybe just because MAGA versus what do they call them, rhinos, Republican name only. Maybe that whole fight has always just been more public because that's kind of how they go. But the Democrats, you got to figure there's people internally like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, it doesn't feel authentic to me in the veto and everything that's happened since that huge pivot where they're like, we want to talk to the crypto community, and trying to slide in these bills from these Democrats. It does not feel authentic. And I think Mark Cuban's right. I think they may lose the election because of that. And you know what? I'm mixed, because I think Trump can be like the drama I don't love of all the stuff, but as a small business owner and certainly as a crypto user, I would win there. But from many other standpoints, the bombasticity, if that's a word, you like that one, but it from that, like I like no drama presidents who just get stuff done and don't have to brag about stuff, but that's not how politics work. But I don't know. This one will be interesting, but I think everyone I talk to, whether they're Republican or Democrat, being in Illinois, they're like, no, the Democrats have it. And I'm like, because I didn't see Trump win in the first one at all. And, obviously, who was it? That documentarian up in Michigan, the
Michael Moore.
Yeah, thank you. He's the one who was like, everybody wake the fuck up. And this time I feel like in crypto, we're telling our independents and our Democratic friends, like, you are asleep. Like, unless the Democrats like literally throw him in jail, Trump's got this. I mean, it seems, and Polymarket, it's not like a gambling site. You base everything on Polymarket, but I don't know. To me, that's a better indicator, because, the guys picking up the phone and calling, like, now that nobody has landlines anymore, the only people that answer are old people. And even those old people, my parents' generation, God bless them in heaven, they're all dead. So boomers don't even answer the phone anymore. So to me, the gambling sites, unless Polymarket's literally based in like Mississippi, like
in Mar-a-Lago.
Or Mar-a-Lago. Like, I think those numbers are very good litmus test. I haven't looked at Nate Silver or any of the big analytics guys, but to me, unless something massive changes, I think Trump's going to win. Because who's RFK gonna pull from too? Is he gonna pull? He is a Democrat, but his policies are more libertarian in the middle. he's not real, like his policies are more, it's anti-vax, which is, I guess that's probably more Republican. The crypto's more Republican. Yeah, so who's he going to pull from, right? Like
Yeah.
Purdue, did Purdue, who did he probably pulled from Republicans. I don't know remember which election that was, but I think that there's another nail in the coffin unless RFK bails. Like I don't see, because all it takes is winning like 4 swing states, right? And he might win states that didn't even appear to be swing states. So who knows? Or maybe not. Maybe you and I are with crypto or tone deaf now, and normies are like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know. This will be fascinating in a terrifying way.
Like, so maybe we're too echo chambered that we think what we think
Maybe.
is, yeah, I don't know. And then I don't know who he pulls from. And like, I was thinking about it, like who'd be able to pull him in? Would Trump be able to pull him in and be like, oh, I'll put him in my cabinet and have him go on his side? Or would it be more likely for Biden to be able to pull him in? Like, I don't know if either of that's relevant, but if he's pulling at, 10% or something in a handful of states, there's the election right there too. So,
I know.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it's,
Every day I get texts and I report junk on every single one of them. It's like Obama like did this and there's a 600% match. So get in there and donate because Trump is evil and this happened. And I block all of them because it's always literally a 5, 6, 700% match. So that's either like a dumb scam or like desperation. I never figured to do the research to do it. I never went on Snopes, but like if it's real, it feels like total desperation to me. I didn't even know you could do a 600% match.
and that it's, if you want to talk desperation, like Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter yesterday to the Fed being like, please drop interest rates. It's like, dude, obviously you're trolling everybody you possibly can, just come
Well,
on.
and politicians shouldn't be, if the government's hand at controlling money supply and interest rates, like this is still a relatively newer thing in the grand scale of humanity. And I think before we all just we've kind of gone soft, we've accepted it. We watch our go local sports teams and we have our big TVs that apparently count for like 23% of CPI now, but I don't know. Like, I think the most sound money is outside of the government's purview. And I guess there was a book written in the late 70s, early 80s that was like, well, one day if something that could be created that was outside of it, that was immutable. And obviously the irony is Bitcoin, 10, 20 years after that, I think it's called the sovereign individual, something like that. But it's amazing how prescient it is. And maybe if our minds lead to what actually happens in our reality out there, maybe that was a necessary step for someone to dream it first. But it's a chance to get off the inflationary on ramp. And I feel like we're just sometimes preaching to the choir with that, but that's to me the most important thing. Like, I worked my ass off since I was 18 or 19 in the summer, and obviously once out of school worked my butt off even more in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. And now it's like you want to make sure that wealth gets preserved as best as possible. And every time I go to buy a stock, I'm like, well, I'm sure Nvidia will go out because in the fangs, because nobody knows where to put it other than those like 5 to 8 companies that just kind of keep dominating, crushing it. And besides that, you're like, it's Bitcoin. So it's like,
Yeah.
it should be like BFANG or something. But every time I have such a hard time because I look at the PE ratios of these, it's like how far in the future these things have to crush it in order to make the money to justify today's stock price, whereas Bitcoin, it just is. You just
Yeah.
buy it and sit. So I just keep adding
Yeah.
stocks outs.
I do like the I'll go back. I'm still a huge fan of the VanEck having HODL for their freaking ticker for their ETF. Like, and I saw an ad for it and it was just like buy and hold. Like it's a very simple strategy. And as we've said multiple times throughout the life of the program, oftentimes, collecting and holding and being entertained but not making a bunch of transactional moves can be your better long-term strategy. So it's remarkable. We're at the precipice. Like, I just think we've kind of looked at this for a long time in terms of where cultures are and where societies are and how long certain societies remain kind of the top kind of influencer across the globe, and we're kind of at a point where there could be a major transition, and all the more reason to collect and hold this alternative asset that can be worldwide and understood and immutable. Because as we see, so the Fed just said that they're going to hold rates, which everyone knew they weren't going to do anything today, but they're saying that maybe they'll have one cut this year. They're just not correct that often, I guess, is my point. Because they're the ones who started with saying it was transitory and this wasn't real. It was just supply chain issues. And now we're sitting here 2-3 years down the road, and they're just going to nestle with these high rates because it doesn't behoove them to make a move and have to go back on it. So they don't really know what's going on. And when you really look at the people in charge not not really having a clue as to which turn to make in the road ahead, like, you want to hold something that isn't relying on that. So going back to our dyed in wool support of holding your own crypto and picking the projects and in what you have the most conviction in, and not necessarily jumping after every new thing that comes along, unless you're doing it more for entertainment and some moonshots, which we see with the meme coin side of things, and we see with some of that stuff. So that's kind of breathing the interest into the space right now in terms of this summer. It's like those are usually the stories that get a lot of people jumping in, and a lot of kind of integration and activities around that sort of stuff, because the basic fundamentals are still pretty simple, and we're seeing it just kind of maturate to a point where its inevitability becomes more and more obvious daily.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I love this one. The ICBC, the world's largest bank out of China, basically is saying, I guess they've done 3 reports to their holders. I mean, this is a mega Chinese bank, and they're saying that Bitcoin solves gold issues, and basically that Bitcoin, it's got transferability, it's got the privacy and the immutability and all that stuff. But just the fact that it's coming from, I think I said Japan once, but it's China.
It's
But
Sean.
that it comes from the world's most populous. I don't know if India's passed them, but it comes from obviously one of the 2 or 3 global superpowers on the other side of the planet. We know our fights here, but if they're softening over there, we always forget, like, if even if the deregulation of crypto, or at least a smart regulation, comes to America and Bitcoin is just free flowing, and like you said, we don't have to feel like shame being in this industry. We certainly aren't feeling the shame, but just to be told we're supposed to, like. But the other side of the world, you forget, if this goes global and just keeps expanding there, like, oh my God, it's game over. So
Yeah.
that one, to me, of all the stories this week, this is obviously a heavy political and macro week, but to me, that one, I think that one came this morning, but that's probably the biggest one. Like, China obviously has banned Bitcoin very unsuccessfully 7 or 8 times, but the last one was fairly effective, but it was probably pretty stupid because that's in, what was that, Disco? I don't know if you were around then. Was that 21, 22, or maybe even 21, when all the miners, there were
Yeah.
so many Bitcoin miners, and they all left, and it took a month or two. The hash rate went way down, and most of them wound up in America, and but and then you get reports here that it's mining in America is difficult because our energy costs in many places are extremely high. So these places with cheaper energy rates are obviously renewable or natural energy, like El Salvador and the volcanoes, which was it? They'd mined. I think they mined 560 or 56 Bitcoin, whatever it is. It's more than zero, and it's amazing. It's like the volcano's gonna volcano's gonna do what a volcano's gonna do and capture that energy, just like derricks that have no way to get that energy supply out, and this is a good, more renewable way to capture that energy into the price of Bitcoin. It's genius.
Made in the USA.
Made in the USA, all the way. Yeah, what a great comment. But you know what? It's catchy. It works.
I know. Like who in this space is gonna argue with wanting to be the it just it's catchy for sure. And yeah, you're right. The Chinese bank, the ICBC, basically they said they were extolling the virtues of Bitcoin over traditional assets like gold and the US dollar. So gloves are coming off a little bit. We talked last week about, the digital yuan and how they took like kind of the starter label off of that, and BRICS is looking at it and all that stuff. So this is definitely part of a new reality that we're in, and we just haven't seen it all shake out. But when you have the largest bank in the world come out and basically do pro crypto, because they also were bullish on Ethereum, I think they equated it to digital oil as opposed to digital gold. So it's just
so the smart contract of it is digital oil.
Yeah, that's kind of the pitch or the approach that a lot.
I'd have to think on that one. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I mean, a busy chain. What makes me most nervous about Ethereum right now is that maybe because my attention isn't there, because I know Ethereum is doing just fine. Like you look at NFTs and, like at the Azuki, and I think the floor is like 3.79. So
yeah, I actually looked at it today.
Yes. It's pretty low, but the spirits are still 85 ETH. I'm like, I wonder what someone would really part for a spirit with. I'm going to go like 35, 40. Like there's definitely a premium, but like guys, like get real. What I think is happening is I think Min just got one. I think like the Spirit DAO, I have a feeling they're maybe culling the collection a little bit back and getting people who have been long-term holders, maybe striking a little quiet deal on the side just to lessen the load. But I guess the point on Ethereum is like, is Solana had all the attention in calendar 24, and so did Bitcoin. Bitcoin's obviously got the attention on the macro side. Runes were big for us, but it was short-lived. But then we saw a little spike last week, and now it's down
like a 48-hour spike. Like if you blinked, you would have missed that little jump.
Yeah, I got some cat in the sats, and I was literally like Pico top exit liquidity for other people. I'm like, I like this one. I'm gonna take a little flyer. But for me, anything, I'm holding my runes until at least you can buy. Oh, I'm breaking up now? No. About how you were saying you're holding them until it's better. That's not just in the batches, right? Right. And when it actually is very fluid and you can trade it like you would buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, you could buy 2.4 shares and not have to like buy them in these blocks. Because what's happening with not only is it inconvenient to buy them in blocks, but what people are doing is they're dropping huge supply of a block at the bottom price, so it weights everything down. So if you have a little supply, you're going to want to go under that. So it's a pretty clever way to like undercut and make the thing lower. But I feel like once it can be split up and you can just buy 10 or 11 or 12, not dependent on what's on the floor, then you're in way better shape.
Yeah. Well, what's your, we talked about last week, we talked about the crypto punk, land of enticement, like when floor hits a certain level, do you have any for Azuki or no? Like if it goes to this, you'll have
good
that.
question. What would I buy in Azuki? Like the only Azuki I would buy, I think, would be a Spirit, and that would probably be just because I've always loved those. But
yeah,
I don't. I feel like my conscience at this point because of the Elemental launch and doing all that research, I think I'd still be like, I'm out. I'm out. There's no way. So
All
I
right.
don't know if I
So the bridge
have
is
a
the bridge is
number.
too far.
I don't, yeah, I don't know if I have a number. For a spirit, I guess my realistic number, if someone said, I'll give you this good looking spirit Azuki for 10, maybe, it wouldn't be high. It wouldn't be 50. I mean, no way. So, because I don't see it if ETH does go up. So, I guess a good time to talk about the ETH ETF. So it sounds like signals are positive again. We thought it was a sure thing a couple weeks ago. And then there was a little, like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, it was like, oh, Gensler may hold this one up. And there was rumblings that it wasn't going. And now it sounds like, no, it's going to happen. It'll be probably end of this month or something. So, I mean, at the end of the day, who knows? It seems like after what happened a month ago, the momentum is there. It's probably going to happen. It's just they got to cross their T's and dot their I's. But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think I'd buy
the
many NFTs.
the S1. Um, there's supposed to be updates on the next phase of that, which are the S1 filings this week. So we'll see, if that goes through. Yeah, dude, it's weird.
Right.
I don't really know, you know, a lot of inspiring. I'm not that motivated to jump into ETH ETF or ETH NFTs.
Right.
More so the ETF than the NFT for me.
Well, I
Uh,
saw that it was there was someone that predicted that ETH ETFs would eat up 20% of the Bitcoin, and that I don't see that because I don't know. It doesn't have the same narrative. I could be totally wrong. I guess like an 80/20 there. ETH's been around a while. It makes sense. It just to me, I know personally I'm not going to go 80/20. Like, I don't know why. I just don't have as much of an interest in the ETH ETFs. Maybe because I can stake my own ETH, and the retirement accounts, clearly they're not allowing you to do that. So what's the point there? But I just, for some reason, a Bitcoin ETF carries more gravitas. Maybe I'll nibble on some, but and maybe I'm already overexposed on ETH, real ETH with staking and validators. But I'm excited for the space for the ETH ETF, but I'm not personally excited for the ETH ETF like I was with all my old bullshitty corporate retirement accounts to put stuff in and to get exposure there.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's I don't know if there's bias in it because it's not flashy in the news or what it is. I don't know. It seems like it's easy to explain Bitcoin relatively for, Wall Street and for investors and, kind of that, what we were just talking about, the digital gold versus oil side of it. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, I think that I almost bought ETH yesterday and everything was dipping, I was like, what should I buy? And I went through the big three. I ended up sitting, but I almost was more inclined to buy Solana than any of the others at that point. Like I was like, staking up a little bit more Solana is probably not going to be a bad move right now. You know what I mean? Because we haven't seen, that run to 1,000 or whatever. That seems like that could be something that happens too. So I'm not advocating like a Solana that I'd be a big Solana ETF guy, but when I really kind of did a gut check, like, okay, if you were going to deploy a little bit right now, because I knew it was kind of a fake dip, right? Like what would I get? And Solana was at the top of my list, interestingly enough.
So you're saying more because you could see Solana hitting 1,000 before ETH hit 10,000 type of thing. I mean, all the new users for NFTs and meme coins, at least as of a week ago, were coming to Solana, and ETH and Bitcoin were kind of tied. So, but I know Solana had a cool off as well. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see. It's not a bad call. You and I were definitely, you know, we made a good call last fall when we saw the
Yeah.
run. We got in probably for the wrong reasons, but actually maybe it wasn't FOMO. We're like, you know what? I'm not fully sold, but I'm gonna get some Solana, and we rode it double at least, which some would scoff at, but I'll take that all day long.
I don't think we even FOMO'd. I think it was more of just almost just like an acceptance, like, okay, this is it's doing what it's doing, and it's not like it's
Right.
just a winner take all situation. It's like they're carving out something that has a pretty rabid audience and does things that the other ones don't. So it seems to be, as I say, I was surprised that that was where my inclination led yesterday. I was like, okay, well, if I was going to do anything, I'll taste a little of that. And I ultimately walked away from the desk and didn't make a move, and I should have, because it's probably up another 7% from then today.
Oh, did everything spike after the announcement this morning?
Yeah.
Like, is Bitcoin back at 70 or no?
It's at 69,595. So yes.
Right. So it went from 66, 67 the last 2 days. And it sounds like you're saying, yeah, every time the Fed comes on, it's the same song and dance. So,
Yeah. Like, I wish I had more, cash in the couch for that day. And I'll probably have to plan ahead for their next meeting, because people just do pointless panics, and that's how it goes down, because it's just associated with the risk stuff, which, again, we talked about before, doesn't make any sense fundamentally. It should be, the inverse of that if you're concerned
right.
about the regular fiat. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So we've gone down. I mean, these are the biggies. Is there
Yeah.
any, I mean, runes we only touched on and it wasn't, but it was super high spiky last week. It's funny because there's still people in these runes that a new one will pop up, and it, like, I know the Billy one is doing great, the cat one, and a couple of these, but a lot, everything deflated because Dog Go to the Moon was, what did it get up to? 930, 940 million before it, that pin popped, and RSIC was maybe in the mid twos, 100 millions. And then, I mean, Dog went down to like 600 million, right? Like, it went way down.
Yeah. And that happened, tie in macro, that kind of happened when the labor report came out on Friday, which got people nervous on that. And that kind of started this drop. So Dog is at 740 right now. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay, so not
when we did,
terrible.
yeah, but when we did the show a week ago, we were saying that he was, they were going to have the big party for the spaces for it to hit the billion. So, you know, we'll have to keep an eye on it. It's tough to really. I'd love to really go deep on runes right now, but I don't really know what's that exciting to cover at this point. I know that a lot of the projects are kind of looking at season twos and stuff like that, but it's pretty opaque in terms of what that really means.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, let's. I mean, are we good for this? Do we want to do our 20-minute segment, or do we want to?
Well, there's one other story that I just wanted to
Oh,
put put in kind of the tickler file, and we'll keep an eye on it. And when we get into
I'm
when it
sorry.
gets in,
Could you say that again? My audio must have broken up. You putting in the what file?
and yes, yes, but I thought it was cool. I didn't know much about it. It kind of slid past me. I wish I was more aware, but this crypto the game CTG, um, they ended up getting acquired by Uniswap, which is interesting, just from Uniswap stepping into that arena. But in doing just a little more kind of looking at the site, I'm excited to at least be on board for the next season and to kind of see how this all plays out. It seems to be, based on, reality show style voting off and things like that. And they're going to win ETH, and there's a certain amount of players that can do it. So I think it's over 10 days. So I just thought it was kind of an interesting story to see. And it's something that when they launch the next season, we'll try to kind of incorporate some updates into the program to keep people in the loop on how it develops.
Right. Yeah, I was a big fan of Survivor growing up, and this one could be interesting. I checked it out a couple days ago when the news came out, and it could be fun. It's interesting. It's almost like Uniswap wants to use media or shows to kind of help spread maybe the word of decentralization and what they're doing. Like, it's on paper, it seems on first glance a little odd, but having come from the entertainment business, both of us, like, obviously you realize, like, well, maybe this is an untapped gem, and if 800 people are getting in per season and they're able to win 80 ETH, I believe. So everyone's putting in zero point 0.1 ETH, it sounds like, I assume, or I don't know if the
Yep.
money
Yeah.
comes
No,
from
that's right.
it's from the actual company, but you basically get voted off and all that stuff. So if it's good entertainment. I'm just curious, because a couple months ago, out of one of our little groups, I got voted off, and it was very unceremonial. I just couldn't log in one day, and obviously you're like, what are we all 20-year-olds? But if it was a game, that'd be interesting. Like, is it almost like you have a chat room and like video chats? Like, it would be interesting to see how they do it and how you would like figure out how to align votes. Because I mean, at first the goal is just to make sure you're in a big enough group where you're not the one, like
Right.
you don't want to be grinding, you don't want to be like chafy to anybody. You just got to be like under the radar, but like, like what I
Like,
noticed in Survivor, the more in control you are, the more you have to seem like you're not the one pulling the strings, but you're still pulling the strings. So yeah, that one, because when, I was like, oh, 80th, whatever. You're like, dude, it's 250 grand. I'm like, oh, well, if you put it that way, yeah, that is kind of cool. It's more than most, broadcast networks can probably put up, except for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and some of the bigger, more primetime ones. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. But
yeah. Yeah, I say I'm cool with doing a tag on 20 if you want to try.
so if we do it, that means I have to edit it too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's look at our top stories and just we'll pick the ones I started to highlight. So the spot Bitcoin, and this will be a summary for this show. So the spot Bitcoin ETF holds 5% of the supply, which I didn't even think we brought in earlier. But so careful what you wish for. Like, is that if they hold it 5%? To me, that doesn't seem like a lot. It doesn't worry me at this point. I guess in 5 years, if a lot of OG holders capitulate and they're holding 20% of the supply or 30%, I guess that would be a little more nerve wracking. But as long as it doesn't approach like 50% or I don't know, 40%, like that one, it doesn't scare me as much. But I guess the more they have, the more maybe they could influence the politics of who the devs are and stuff like that. I don't know. But that one doesn't worry me right now. Does it worry you?
No, but I need to do more research on trying to figure out how, some of these funds are operating. There's stuff swirling around about, are people buying the ETF and then not buying the asset or using it like kind of, some sort of, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's like, why is it staying in this range if there's
Right.
so many of these inflows coming in? And is it like a hedge play to sell one for the other? So more to come on that. I want to do a little bit more follow up on that, but that's kind of where my head's at. Is I don't really necessarily understand how some of these sophisticated futures, operators are and stuff like that, and how that could be impacting it, because the math still doesn't really add up to me that we're in this range. And you see, obviously there were some outflows over the last couple of days tied to the bigger stuff, but if you really look at it, a lot's going in and the number is not going up to the degree that the amount of money coming in. So something doesn't add up to me, and I'm not sure exactly what it
Oh,
is. So that's me kind of articulating the beginning of a thought that will be more
yeah, no,
fully
I know
developed.
what you mean. Like those big, because we had two outflow days, right, in the last 2 days,
Right.
and one of them it was like 200 million. It was fairly sizable, but the last week there was some massive inflow days, right? And
Yeah.
wasn't there one upwards of 800 million net positive? You are right. Like this whole short squeeze I keep talking about, clearly there's this trading market where between 66 and 72 or 73, there's plenty of like day traders and hedge funds or whoever who are not afraid to bob in and out. I mean, like I said, I'm a medium to long term person, because every time I try and trade short term, I always am like, oh, like you realize how manipulated stuff is, and to me it's always like I'm not on the inside. So like all the money I've made has been in the Bitcoin and ETH. The appreciation has been the buy and hold. But it's like we're all waiting for that breakout. I guess cyclically we would expect it to happen this fall with the election. I mean, this is going to be, maybe we're being prescient right now, but this fall is going to be interesting, right? Like if that's generally after the halving, which was what was that April? Oh, it was 420, duh. So it was April 20th. Hey, we won't forget the fourth halving, will we? So by the fall, I think is generally when highs per cycle happen, maybe even into 2025. But with the election, like I guess if Trump won and that having, like, you could see it going to 150, 200 easy, but at some point people are going to be trading up and down, and they think they have it all figured out. But then a pension fund or two or a huge hedge fund or some big company comes in. And to me, like at some point, the supply won't be able to keep up in the short term, and it just goes way up. And I'm here. I can't wait for that time because I feel like with 95% confidence, I could say it's going to happen, even though in life, who knows? But that one, it's like, I guess you've been in way shorter than me. Like, are we just brainwashed, or did that just feels like so obvious to me?
Dude, when you look at we didn't even touch on this, but I guess, Semler Scientific is another one of those corporate holders that added. And, we talked about that a couple weeks ago when it's like, why wouldn't companies be putting it on their balance sheet, and why wouldn't they be taking profits and rolling it into that? So we talk about Apple mentioning AI, 4 days ago, and their stock going crazy. Imagine when they disclose or they say, hey, we're going to, put X amount of our profit towards Bitcoin holdings or whatever it may be. It's just these massive operations. We talked about the pension fund of Wisconsin,
Right.
and just all these. We haven't even gotten into the, kind of the different countries and how all that's going to come into play. So again, every week, despite the chop or despite the, staying in a range or whatever, my long-term excitement for where things is going to head is never dampened. And kind of doing the show and just talking about it will then kind of set me off for the rest of the weekend to the weekend, very excited that we're in this space and that we're able to have kind of this time to watch this go. But I just think we're looking at all these things changing. When you have the, former president who, in a lot of polls is leading to take over, be like made in the USA for Bitcoin. Like, are you crazy? Like what that could represent, to
Yeah.
have, we start getting it like being almost patriotic now to support Bitcoin. If that happens, like, I don't know. I think,
No, but that it actually raises a really interesting question. So it kind of takes us full circle to it. And I say let's just chat a lot. Let's skip the 20-minute today. Like we
okay,
know we're going to do
100%
that in the
agree.
future. Like, but is it going to be effective today? Now, who cares? But
Okay, cool.
you brought up something that triggered something in my brain. AI. Apple said AI. Some people loved it. Some people didn't. But clearly the market just ate it up. And sometimes when Apple comes out with the new thing and they're like, whatever, like the camera's a little bigger, like you said, like it's always this incremental nothingness. They were it flew on this one, right? So they're now
Yeah.
the number one valued company again, overtaking, I assume it was Microsoft, and I don't know if Nvidia or anyone else had passed them, but so they're number one again. But would crypto as a holding in your treasury give the same boost? I don't know. It would. We would probably be like, oh yeah, now the Apple stock I hold, I'm adding more because I know that their treasury is way more financially sound. So that'll be interesting. Like normies obviously would be like, what? It either wouldn't even hit the radar, they wouldn't care. But I wonder right now, I would it move the needle with investors? I don't know.
Well, with this basement investor, it has moved the needle for me in looking at the publicly traded mining companies. And when I see, Marathon being like close to the top of holders for, businesses, like that makes it more compelling to me to, get involved with that stock. And
Right.
so I don't know if we've seen exactly how that's going to go, but it does seem like a lot of the mining companies are pretty big holders, and obviously that's something that makes sense. There was a piece today I think I saw about somebody saying that crypto and AI could be a $20 trillion mega trend. That's what Bitwise says. So, that whole
Wait,
immersion,
wait, wait.
like
You said million. You mean billion or trillion?
trillion is the
You
article.
said trillion. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So they're just saying, that Bitwise notes that Bitcoin miners have the resources that AI firms need. AI and crypto could add a total of 20 trillion to the global economy. They have the potential to intersect in other areas other than mining, such as information validation and virtual assistants. So that's one of the things you start hearing so much about, like, oh, are these, AI, are they going, what are AI agents going to be using for their transactions? And everyone says it's going to be crypto because it just makes sense. So I
Well,
just
it
think that
has to be, right? You can't
yeah,
you
like
can't
how
be
else
doing
can you have an
credit card
autonomous,
or right.
so just if you see what happened just by mentioning that there'll be more AI worked into iPhones, and see what that did to the entire market cap of the US stock, the whole entire stock environment. Think of once crypto gets integrated into this and really does, you were the one who told me before we even did the show. I remember I was at a restaurant and you were texting me like, dude, you got to watch this thing to see how AI is going to, tie in with crypto. And this makes all the sense in the world. And, we're just starting to see that, kind of the infancy of those manifestations, which I'm sure will come out in just massive ways.
Yeah, I just wonder if a company right now, it sounds like you're saying AI will actually lead people back to crypto. Maybe the cart was put before the horse on this one, and crypto came out, then AI, into the more mainstream, if you will, or more in the consciousness, and now crypto obviously is the financial underpinning of that. I mean, obviously then you get into crazy stuff like AI could, whether it's there's someone running it behind it or not, could accumulate crypto through either being a really good, arbitrage trader or high frequency, however it figures it out, and it could actually have gain cash in and of itself, which obviously I don't think we're there yet, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I think a lot more of these treasuries or pension funds have to jump on, and then we'll see this jump. And sometimes I think like this historical like 4-year cycle, and when things are at the highest, because you can't, unless things work in a more kind of magical like lunar, moon cycle way. Like you can't predict when the Japanese pension fund of 1.4 trillion is going to be like, yep, like we did 0.1%. Now we've just put another 0.9% in. We're going to see what the reaction is. Then we're going to go more. Like you can't. And because at some point, what I'm hoping to see is like sovereign FOMO, corporate treasury FOMO from all of these, because then once you get mega money, then it's like everybody FOMOs and be like, wait, I need to hold a piece, because I love that analogy that people say, like, you don't really care, like, as long as you're doing okay in the stock market compared to your neighbors, like as long as they're not making way more than you don't really
Right.
care. And we both know that if you've been in Bitcoin for the last couple of years, when it's finally run up again, done a 4x since probably this time last year, right? We're probably at 19 or 20, I would think, last summer. That, but that didn't hit their radar because it's not in the mainstream media news. But at some point, they're going to realize, like, oh wait, my neighbor does have a shortcut cheat code, and and because of these corporate entities and these big entities coming in, and then it's off to the races. So it's like, it's funny. It's like, this is the show about saying how the squeeze is going to come in 16 different ways, but
Yeah.
I stand
Well, we're
by
still
it.
we're still bullish on the squeeze, is I guess is a point. Like
Yeah,
we haven't changed that directionally. There's nothing that has happened that has
yeah,
done anything but further that belief. And we're just seeing different kind of fragments and manifestations from, the entire US election is now focusing on, so these
yeah.
things, it takes a minute for it all to kind of coalesce and to see the impact, but the movement is undeniable.
100% agree. I don't know, Disco. I think we're good. I mean, we've got this
Yeah.
chart. I don't know if I have the chart. Oh, I do have the chart up. So MicroStrategy, I mean, they hold 1% of Bitcoin, but I know this one was interesting to you, and it sounds like Marathon. You forget Tesla got Bitcoin years ago. and they still have what $671 million in Bitcoin assets on their treasury. So I mean, there's a lot of people that hold it. I mean, nobody's nearly as big as MicroStrategy, but Coinbase is there. They've got
Block.
Block, and a lot of these guys, Cipher Mining. A lot of these guys are miners. But it makes you realize, there's a lot of companies that are hold it, but none of the fangs or any of the big names. Like, you have to imagine if I was a rising star at Apple and my boss liked me, I'd be like, you really gotta, they'd be like, all right, kid, I hear you, but because if you're into it, you're into it, and you just think one of these big companies, because you don't want to be the last big company or the last fang to do it. You want to be one of the first ones. I mean, the earlier you are, the more the musical chairs, like you got your chair, like in some point, they're going to get a chair, but the incremental price of asking to sit down gets exponentially higher. So,
Yeah. Well, I think I'm excited for the remainder of the week. I'm excited to sit back and get you back into your home studio. But I think
yep,
it went well. We had pretty good technicals, I think, throughout. So that's a victory to celebrate. Like, you can
that
do
my
this
caramel
mobile.
corn.
Is that
I ate it.
from there, or is it from?
I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, it says Outer Banks.
Outer Banks popcorn. Yeah. So I bought it on a whim. I think it was like I looked at the price tag after I bought it. I was like, wait, how much is caramel corn these days? It's like $15. Like, but maybe that's inflation. That's
CPI.
inflation.
Yeah, check the
That's
CPI.
I don't know if caramel corn was included in the CPI thing, or maybe caramel corn was, but the caramel corn with the almonds and cashews was not.
Indeed.
Got to have protein.
I like it. Well, every week we do the show, and we do it for a lot of different reasons, but it's intended for entertainment purposes and not to be considered financial advice. So be sure to do your research, have a strategy, stick to it, be smart, don't get sucked in, and don't get over your skis, so to speak, and be smart, but enjoy it out there, because it's a very interesting and entertaining time. And I think that we all should consider ourselves lucky to be plugged in and tapped into this, because it's never a dull moment. And we're starting to see it really kind of take on this maturation level of being part of the, kind of cultural moments of what's happening. And, as I say, I can't get past the made in the USA, being
Yeah.
utilized. So I think we're seeing some big changes. And I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts and conversations with the audience. And if you guys ever have any input, we believe feedback's a gift. So certainly share it in any way that you want. And we'll be here again.
Take care, everybody. Yeah, that made in the USA. You're right. That did. It's funny. I didn't think that would be the one that kept coming back, but I think that just goes to show you how good he and his group are with and I think he just kind of comes up with that stuff in the spot, I would think, but it's pretty clever. And if the Democrats are out there, I want everybody in government to be on board with crypto, like regardless of what party you are. Like, it's common sense. It's a better system than we have now. It's yes, it gets other people rich, namely everybody listening here and us, but it also is a more immutable system, and it has protections against inflation, and you're not just at the mercy of what these folks who really don't have anything in common with people who live out in on Main Street, USA, whereas crypto you could save and hodl and all that stuff. So blah, 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 like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But until next time, everybody, good to see you from the Outer Banks. Disco, thanks for doing this with me.
Oh, happy.
Until next time.